Hello, everyone. My name is Julianne Meyer, and I am the host of Own Your Wellness. And I am excited because today's guest is somebody we haven't had before and a different kind of guest. So I am pumped. Her name is Renee Bergman. Let's bring her on. Hello, Renee. How are you?
Good. How are you?
So good. I am so glad to see you. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I did some research on you as well, extra, because I just found you fascinating. So I would just love to start off with, would you mind telling us a bit about yourself and your own wellness journey?
Absolutely. So I'm a functional diagnostic, sorry,
That's okay.
a functional diagnostic practitioner. And what does that mean? It's like a lot of words. I'm a health detective. And so I really love to get down to the nitty gritty root issues that people have, why they're having autoimmune disorder, why they're having cancer diagnosis, why they're having gut dysfunction, their hormones are a whack. That is what I do for people, is I help dig down and use functional labs to get to the root of that. And then we use formulated food plans, and we use different health and body changes to do all of that and change the way that your body is metabolically functioning. So for me personally, about 6 years ago, I got really sick. I woke up one day and my face I looked like Quasimodo. It was gigantic. If you go to my website and you look at my story, you can see a picture of it there. It's pretty great. I'm wearing a unicorn hat because, at that point, and honestly, I had just hit a complete wall. I was in bed all the time. I felt terrible. My energy was awful. My hormones had plummeted. And I was only 34. And I thought, I can't believe this is happening. So after seeing doctors, I got the dreaded call, a doctor saying, we think you have beginning stages of lymphoma. And that was earth shattering for me, right? At that point, I had 2 small children. I had all this life to look forward to, and I just couldn't believe that that's the diagnosis that I was being given. And so after seeing a lot of doctors, a lot of confusion, lymphoma is a difficult cancer, right? Because it's an autoimmune disorder. If you don't know that, it's not just a cancer diagnosis, it's an autoimmune disease. That's the root of it. And so it's kind of a confusing cancer, and it's difficult to know when you're supposed to start treating it. So I saw a lot of doctors, had a lot of confusion why my face was swelling, where that was coming from. And I ended up seeing a functional medicine practitioner like myself. And we got to the root of things. And the craziest part of the story is a big part of where all the infection came from for me was that I had implants in my mouth. I had tooth implants, had them for like 20 years. And I had infection in them. And it was leaching all into my lymph system and going down into my breast and leaking out and causing all the swelling in my face.
Wow.
And so we did tons of different functional labs, found my hormones. I was 34 and I was in menopause already, which was not what I wanted. And so we got to the root of things. We started really working. I changed a lot of my eating. I was already a pretty healthy person, but there were just pieces of the puzzle I had no idea how to correct and fix, had a bunch of surgery. And lo and behold, I was able to be healed from it. I am totally free and clear of cancer. I have more energy now in my 40s than I did in my 30s because I didn't know I was that sick. I didn't know that's what was going on. And so that's what really led me to go back to school and figure out how to help others and become a health detective as well. So
I love that. I mean, not that you had to go through it, but it's absolutely fascinating. And a bunch of little bells went off in my head about questions that I have. And, something that I want to comment on, first of all, is that, you say you have more energy now in your 40s than you did in your 30s because you didn't realize like how sick you were. But so many people are like that when you say they have no idea because they're so used to feeling that way that they don't realize that there's more.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people that I begin working with, they usually have symptoms that are further, I like to describe like a stream is what's going on with your health. And usually it's like your adrenal system and your HPA axis, which is like where your thyroid and things are at. those things kind of start to go off, but usually people don't seek help, right? Because they're just kind of tired and they think, oh, I'm exhausted. I have little kids, or I work 80 hours a week, or whatever the thing is that you can kind of pawn it off. And then maybe they go a little further down the line and they have like some gut dysfunction and some things going on, but they're like, whatever, you know, that's normal, right? Everybody gets diarrhea sometimes. Sometimes people get constipated. Sometimes people can't eat foods, whatever. And then eventually, usually their hormones go totally whacked and they come and they're like, I am just a raging lunatic, male and female. I work with both. And here's the crazy thing, men, you create estrogen as well. And so it can do as crazy things to your body as it can do in us women. And so people usually come to me and I say, you're way down in this stream, in the pool, way down below. We've got to go all the way back upstream and fix what's going on up there to fix all these symptomatic things that you have going on down at the bottom of the pool, to really help you restore all the different systems in your body. So that's a lot of what ends up happening with people. They just wait until the symptoms are so bad, they don't really know where it all began, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing too, is if you don't pay attention, your body will get louder and louder and louder until all of a sudden you are paying attention to what's going on. Like, you know, your face getting bigger. That's something you could not ignore.
That's exactly why the name of my business is Megaphone Functional Health, because your body is a megaphone screaming to you what is going on.
I love that. So for the audience, I'd love for you to describe the difference between what you do and like an MD.
Yeah. So typically when you're seeing an MD, you're going for a particular issue, right? And so a lot of times you're looking for diagnoses. I don't diagnose people. And maybe you're even looking for something to take to help with symptoms that you're having. And there's a great place for modern medicine. It's saved my life many a times. It's something that is very necessary in our world. So I never want to do this like us against them thing, because I don't think that that's helpful. But functional medicine looks at things a little bit differently. It approaches the body as a mind, a body, and a soul. And so you can't pull those apart, right? You can't pull apart what's happening up in your mind from what's happening in your heart. And then guess what? Your body tells you when all those things are awry as well, right? So when we have anxiety, sometimes we feel it in our stomach, right? So as a functional practitioner, I go, tell me all the things that you're feeling and experiencing. And then we look at every single system. So we look at the gut, we look at the hormones, we look at minerals. Minerals are what turn your engine on. Your minerals are what are the turning of the key and having the engine flip on. So if your minerals are depleted, that's why you can't get up and go. We look at food sensitivities, but guess what? If you find food sensitivities and you don't fix what's going on in the gut, it doesn't matter if you remove those foods. You're just going to keep adding more and more foods that you're allergic to because you didn't fix the core, the root issue. So we look at all of those pieces. And then I'm also trained in the Enneagram. And so I bring that piece into my practice, which a lot of people really enjoy. They love to learn about who they are, why they kind of function the way they do in relationships, understanding where some of their stress comes from because of the way that they function. And we know that stress is kind of the root of all physical really, if we could pinpoint one thing that causes all our physical ailments, it's stress. Stress in lots of different forms, right? Stress in having a gut dysfunction, like having like a parasite or a worm or something like that, which you'd be surprised at how many people have worms and parasites and don't know it. So we test for that. But then also we see that stress causes hormone dysfunction.
Yes.
Like hormones can go totally just raging and you can feel crazy right before your period, or can feel super sad during certain parts of your month during your cycle because of hormones that have plummeted. And stress is such a big contributor to that process. So,
I actually want to touch on something, but before we do that is, especially women, they think that those things are normal. like normal to have cramps that debilitate you or have this anger or, crying at the refrigerator commercial. And, it's not necessarily normal. I love that. I love that you're making that, I mean, where did that idea even come from? Why do we have to deal with that? I don't know where that came from.
No, it's like we've been just conditioned to think you have a period and we don't want to deal with it. And so whatever the things are that come with it, you need to just figure it out.
Yeah.
And deal with it on your own. And so a lot of women, and there's a lot of shame around periods. Like, think about, I was always trained when I was a kid to shove a tampon up my sleeve, when I was why do you care? Like, it's a normal 50% of the population is menstruating.
Exactly.
What's it matter if you're on your period? But then we have all these other stigmas, right? That tell us like it's normal to bleed super heavy. It's normal to not be able to get pregnant. It's normal to have miscarriages. I mean, the deeper we go into women's health, the more we just see that we have just been told time and time again, this is all in your head and you just need to like buck up and deal with it. And it's just true.
Something I love to say, and I haven't said in a really long time, is just because something is common doesn't make it normal.
That's why testing with functional labs is so key and crucial. I say test, don't guess. Because if you're guessing at why you're having the symptoms that you're having, you may kind of like land on the wrong type of treatment plan for yourself. And oftentimes that's where we feel like we have to land. We either have to go to like traditional medicine and get like a blood test, and it has to be super definitive, which it takes a long time for a lot of things to show up in our blood.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of us feel terrible. We get blood work and they're like, it looks great. And we're like, but I don't feel good, right? But functional labs, because of the way that they look at the body and they look at all the systems individually, you're getting to see what's going on and why that's off and how to really fix it and what your particular protocol needs to be, because your protocol might be different than someone else's. If you're dealing with PCOS, and someone else is just dealing with low progesterone, which, those can be pretty similar, but maybe it's two different ways that your lab is looking. I'm going to give you two different, ways of going about healing your body. And that's why it's really important to me to be able to test people and really look at what's your body telling me through the test. So you can really put things into place, very personalized, very special to you individually.
Something I like about functional medicine, and I'm with you, I never ever want to pit like Western medicine and functional I don't know. There's room for everyone and there's a place for everything. But, I just feel like, especially in the United States, we're just taught that the person in that white coat knows everything. And that's silly. I mean, that's not even possible. I mean, think about how much they have to go to school to learn what they learn. And that's only one snippet of anything. And, I just love the idea of like what you do, where you actually have the time and take the time to listen to what's going on with the person and not necessarily try to fit them into a preconceived box that you learned about in school.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying that, and I'm not trying to put down it. I appreciate my doctors. I 100% do. But it's like I would never go to a doctor when I have a question about medicine. I go to the pharmacist because that's what they know.
Yeah, exactly. And, a lot of times people think they have to choose one or the other. Exactly. I really encourage people, I can be a part of your team.
Yeah.
So, I like right now have clients that have type 2 diabetes. So I have a team with their doctor. I even converse with the doctor and say, hey, these are the nutritional advice that I'm giving them. This is what I see when they're telling me their glucose levels throughout their day while they're eating. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. Is there something else that I don't know based off of medication you've given them or ways that you're adjusting their insulin, whatever it is? And that's such a good marrying of both worlds to be able to say, hey, you can have a team of people that come from different approaches in different worlds and have those work together.
Exactly. It's kind of like my uncle Carl. He had, well, he has cancer, but my cousin put him on this diet and all this other stuff, and he was riding his bike to and from chemo and radiation, all that business. It was like, he wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for her and his team of doctors doing, so it was like this whole group effort. And I just love the idea of getting as much help as possible. I think too that a lot of people just don't realize that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help from more than one source. It's okay to get your answers where you need them. And ultimately, you're the only person living in your body.
Yeah.
So you get to make the choices for you, hopefully.
Yeah.
So something else that you touched on that I'd love for you to explain a little bit more is Enneagrams. So what is that for the people that are watching?
Yeah. So the Enneagram is a personality test that it has 9 different numbers. So 1 through 9, and it's 9 different personality types. And instead of looking at sort of the positives of who you are, it looks at how did you become who you are at this point. So it's like this great guide to seeing how you function because of what your upbringing was and how you received the world as a child. And so it really brings like amazing light to it. I love it. It's one of my favorite tools for people to really dive into. So I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, which means I'm the enthusiast. I'm like, bring all the fun all the time, but I also don't like hard things. So I tend to avoid them. I try to push them away. That comes from a lot of childhood trauma of like, learn how to just like, move along to get along. And so it really looks at the whole of how you became who you are, how you use your skills to move throughout the world, and how you relate to other people. So there's lots of talk about like, if you're a 7, maybe you might, if you marry this number, like I'm married to a 3. We tend to be a big force because both of us are influencers and we tend to like have big personalities. It might have looked totally different if I would have married someone that was a 2, who's more calm and caretaking and things like that. So there's a lot to be learned in it, especially when people are working with me, because they, your personality has so much to do with how you feel, right? Your emotions have so much to do with how you feel throughout your day, where your emotions like rising and falling, how you connect with like your boss, with coworkers, with your spouse. And so all of those things really play into when you're seeking healing. Like, do you have people that are super supportive? Are you willing to ask for help? Are you someone that's super regimented and you need like a very detailed protocol from me? Or are you someone that needs to like really have some freedom within the way that you function? So it's a really amazing tool. I encourage anyone to take a look at it. There's lots of memes and stuff out there that are like funny, but if you, there's a great book called The Typing Book, and it's a Enneagram book that gives you all the details on all the different numbers. And it's a great way to kind of look at who you are and which number you are.
Well, I would think too that would have a big influence in how you would help somebody. Like you mentioned before, if somebody, needs like step-by-step directions. I mean, it's all fine and dandy if you have a protocol, but if somebody's never going to follow it, then how's that even going to help? So
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a big piece. It's a big part of my practice is having enough time to spend with people, number one, so that you have the time to really tell me what you're experiencing. But then for me to learn who you are so that I'm actually coaching you through the process in the way that you receive information the best, So I'm not just like dumping information and maybe it's not how you receive it.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they can't hear you, then what good is it going to do? I guess my other question would be, can you be a combination of 2 numbers?
Yeah, so the Enneagram is interesting. A lot of times, so one of the tests that I love to run on all of my clients is called a WEPS test, and it's it gives you the percentages of each number that you kind of are. So you kind of like know the different pieces, because you're not always just one person, right? There's a lot of facets to you. But then it also tells you you are one number, primary number that you like operate out of primarily, but then you have wings to each side of you. So like whatever number you are, whichever numbers are to the right and the left of you, you have some characteristics of those as well. So like I'm a 7 and I have a wing 8, which means I'm like pretty fierce. I'm a big fighter. If I like get into a situation where I feel like someone's attacking me, I like to argue. I actually by arguing, which is not fun when it comes to like a spouse. Sometimes my husband's like, I don't really like this. You and I'm like, I feel so loved when you fight back with me. So it's good for you to know that.
That is so funny. I love that so much. Something else I was thinking too is kind of, since I love the saying, we keep our issues in our tissues. And if somebody, depending on how they relate to the world, you could help them with certain types of stress relief or stress coping skills. Like, I don't know, maybe meditation for one person, or writing in a journal for somebody else, or, just ways to help people actually do the things that will help them release the tension and the stress that's causing all of these things to happen.
I talk a lot about that because, movement's such an important part of our body being whole and healed. If we can't move and we're not having movement, then our body just sort of atrophies. It's got to have it for the circulation, for the dopamine and the serotonin and all of those things that get stimulated when you move your body. But if I just told people like, why don't you go for a walk? Why don't you go for a run? You might hate that activity. So you're never going to do it. So I talk a lot about all different types of activity. And then I talk about how do you feel after you do certain activities? Because one of the signs that your body is metabolically really out of whack and really struggling is if you're really tired after you work out and it doesn't actually provide energy for you. It means that your cells just can't regenerate. And so that it's a stressor. It sees it as more of a stress as opposed to like an increase in energy and helping you move throughout your day. So it gives me really big clues and insights into what we need to look at and what tests we need to run. Look at the thyroid, look at the hormone levels, look at what's happening in the gut. Where are we seeing other stressors that are keeping the body from being able to actually be energized by movement as opposed to depleted by movement?
I like that you mentioned that, because a lot of people, especially when, because I'm a personal trainer as well, and I'm not against any type of exercise per se, but things like, what's it? Oh my God. Oh goodness. I'm having a brain fart, but it's the one where not HIIT, but the other one that's super hard on your body. And it's like, where you're throwing, CrossFit, and you're like throwing tires and stuff. And I am not against anything. However, there, like for somebody like me, that would be a stressor. That would not be a good form of exercise for me.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's such an important thing to really think through, because a lot of times that's such a great thing that you even recognize as a personal trainer.
Yeah.
That we all have different levels of energy, right? Yeah. And different like abilities. And so depending on what your goals are, you really want to think through how you're going about using movement to really fuel your body. And not just like, I think sometimes people feel like movement is like a punishment, that working out is a punishment, right?
Yeah, it's so funny.
You sort of get like trained that way by some of these like different types of exercises of like even CrossFit. And if you like CrossFit, that probably means you like really enjoy like that exertion of physical energy. But for a lot of us, it feels kind of like abrasive, and like that feels like punishment to me to do 57 burpees in a row and then jump up and down on a box. So I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing too. I mean, it's just, you have to figure out what's going to work, what best for you. And it doesn't all look the same. And just because it was great for your friend who has a similar whatever, doesn't mean that that's automatically what you need to be doing too.
And a lot of people really think that exercise, if they're exercising and their body isn't changing the way they want it to, they just kind of give up.
Yeah.
when really that should be a sign to them, hey, there's something else going on. Because sometimes, like, if we have too much estrogen in our body is not responding well to working out. If we have any parasitical activity or gut dysfunction, a leaky gut going on, sometimes our body doesn't respond well to movement. And so sometimes people feel pretty frustrated of like, I have a lot of people come to me that say, I've tried Whole30, I've tried keto, I worked out, I did all these things and nothing's changed. Like my energy feels the same, my body hasn't changed. What gives? And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. We've got to get to the root of why that's not changing. Instead of just like trying to keep like exercising your way out of it, you know, or like supplementing your way out of it. People will say, you take all these supplements. And I'm like, do you know why you're taking them? Did anyone tell you like how that's helpful?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is like one of my peeves. I just like, you do realize everything you introduce into your body that is extra, you're throwing something else off. So you've got to be careful about how you do things. Like, I mean, and this is just my personal thing, but if I can get it from food, I'm going to get it from food first. Yep. 100%. It's the most natural way. It's like the body's way of, it's just natural instead of like trying to force, my protein powder. And, I'm not going to lie, I've used that before too, but I'd rather just get my spinach out or maybe some salmon or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a big part of my practice is looking at especially in minerals, because minerals are something that you can get from food sources. And so, someone will be super depleted in selenium, which selenium is super important for your thyroid function. So I might see that and I'm like, oh man, you really need that. I'll be like, hey, you need to eat a Brazil nut every day. It's like so easy, right? Way cheaper than supplements too. So
yeah, exactly. And then that opens up the whole can of, does this one even work? Is this going to be compatible with my body? All these other things that variables. There's just a bunch more variables, whereas a Brazil nut is a Brazil nut. There's no, warning labels or none of that. So.
And there's a place when you have holes in your nutrition and you need some extra support, but it shouldn't be the go-to.
That's right? Exactly. Yes. Yes.
It should be that if you're thinking, man, I'm really tired and someone told me to take X, Y, or Z, it probably means you need to see someone like me, because it probably means you have something else metabolically going on.
Yeah. And
so you got to kind of, go to town with that.
Exactly. Well, on that note, we do need to go to commercial break. So we'll be back in just a minute. Well, I know you guys are having as much fun as I am, but as I mentioned, we do have to go to commercial. But before we go, I'm going to say hello to everybody who is watching us live. We will be right back after these messages. Are you someone who is struggling to move forward because you suffered a loss? Maybe you're even finding it difficult to complete the most basic tasks. Are you looking for a way to start enjoying life again without feeling guilty or the resistance to do so? Spiritual life coach Sarah Stockham saw a need for people who haven't learned how to grieve without putting their entire lives on pause. And so she created a program that solves this issue called Choosing Life Right Now. This program is simple and you can do it on your own. If you are ready to learn how to feel your grief while still being able to smile, to honor the sacredness of what took place as a loss, and yet still continue to live with joy, and if you'd like to take care of your whole being with grace and love, then I'd like to invite you to experience her new program called Choosing Life Right Now. Sarah is currently offering her program for the promotional price of $77, but it won't stay at this price for long. To learn more, check out her website. The address is on the screen.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, my name is Julianne Meyer, and you are watching Own Your Wellness. And today's special guest is RENEE BERGMEN. Let's bring her back. Hello. So before the break, we were talking with you about you and what you do and how you help people. So I want to make sure that people can find you. So Megaphone Functional Health. I love that name, by the way. So amazing. What can people find on your website?
Well, you can definitely book a consult with me. I do a free consult. I'd love to just hear what you have to say. There's no sales pitch in the beginning unless you're saying, hey, I know for sure that I need to work with you, but I'd love just to hear what you have going on. I'll tell you if I can't work with you.
I love that.
It's definitely what you'll find on there. You'll find my story. You'll find packages that are on there, but primarily the best way to really figure out what you need is to book a consult with me.
I like that. And I like the idea too that, you'll say if you can help somebody or not. And, sometimes it's if you got a broken bone and there's a bone hanging out of your arm, maybe it's time to go to the emergency room. But
sometimes there's certain diseases that are more complex than what I know. And so I'll make that clear to you. Oftentimes though, what I'll tell you is that you need a team, right? So I'm probably part of the team in the process of figuring out how to get to the root of what's going on.
And like we said before, I love that idea. Why not have as many people in your corner as possible? I wouldn't go to an oncologist for my foot. So, I would probably have an oncologist plus somebody that was going to look at my foot. It's like the whole beingness that we were talking about before.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. And then also, I just wanted to mention too, while we're here, they can find you on Instagram as well. Same handle, Megaphone Functional Health. And then what kind of stuff can they find there?
On my Instagram, I use it to give a lot of education. So I do a lot of different posts on what things are going wrong in your body, a lot of what are signs that something's off. And how to really evaluate those. So it really is a great educational place to learn. And then you can always DM me. So, if you can't navigate over to my website and it's easier because you're already on Instagram, you can just DM me. And that's a great way too.
I like that. So, that makes me, something you said just actually has made me think of a question, if I could speak. And that is, there's a lot of times that people do have symptoms, but they don't even realize that maybe that is an actual symptom. What are some things that maybe should be more of a red flag or hey, maybe I should pay attention to this, that something, most people might just ignore? What are some things?
So some of my favorite things to ask people is, are you pooping?
Yes.
People always love to talk about, but pooping is a critical piece of our health and tells us how healthy our intestines and our colon and our gut and our GI are. And those are all tied in with our hormones and how we excrete things and how we excrete toxins. So if you're not pooping regularly, which means 1 to 2 times a day and feeling like you're fully empty and not having rock pebbly poop or not having squishy diarrhea, I talk a lot about poop when people come on with me. That's a really huge clue that things are off. So that's a big one. Another thing is your liver is really critical to your health and removing toxins from the body. So I like to tell people that it's super important to do some some evaluation. Is my liver working? And you're thinking, okay, I've never thought about that in my life. Super simple. Do you feel irritated really often? Do you have a lot of anger? Do you feel like your body is always kind of like sluggish and moving along? Do you feel like when you eat that you feel somewhat bloated and like you just aren't processing food? Those are all signs the liver is not doing its job. If the liver is not doing its job, then your hormones are not processing correctly. They're not filtering out, which means that your colon is not able to do its job to excrete the things that the liver has worked out of itself. And you kind of have a big, huge mess. So those are two really big ones that I tell people to really think about. And then how do you feel after you eat? Do you feel fueled and energized, or do you want to take a nap? Or do you feel like you're 4 months pregnant? All of those are signs that things aren't going right. So those are some really like key ones that people sort of want to ignore, of like, this is normal. Especially like irritability and anger and frustration, right? We wouldn't think those are like reasons to seek out our health, but they're really tied to our liver and liver stagnation.
You know, and I love telling this story because it is not nobody believed me, but before I got really into nutrition and health and wellness, I had a personal trainer and they wanted me to eat 100 grams of protein every single day. And to reach my goals, which it did work, but I was angry all the time. And I call it protein anger. It was because my liver was having so much problem, like trying to, process all of this protein. And I just like, I can't do this. I was angry. It was so bad.
That's such a good like example of what's going on, of someone telling you, hey, this is a good option for you. And you going, I do not feel good when I do this.
Yeah. And, and I always like to tell that story too, because it's like, I know this is not working for me. So I need a different answer. And it's okay for me to stop taking the advice of a professional. Yes. But then again, at the time, I didn't realize that a personal trainer doesn't really know much about nutrition necessarily. So that's not probably the right person to go to if you have nutrition questions, if they don't have that training. Once again, doesn't mean they're not a great personal trainer.
Yep, absolutely.
No, I love that.
Also, when you're eating a lot of protein like that, you have to have something called stratocrit. And that is something that breaks fat down. Oh. So your body naturally like produces it and creates it in the gut, and it breaks the fat down. If it's not breaking that down, that's oftentimes when you have that real feeling of like you're full all the time. Like you eat and it's like, it's kind of like a brick sitting there.
Yeah.
And so that's actually one of the tests that I run. It's on the GI map that I test everybody with. It has 89 different markers of what's going on in your intestinal tract and in your colon and in your immune system. And it tests for that to see, are you breaking fat down? Because that can make you feel pretty terrible. It means that your digestion is not like up to par and things aren't starting with enzymes in your mouth, which is from chewing. And then when you swallow, like all the enzymes need to start breaking things down. You don't have enough enzymes to break things down. So there's lots of different reasons that can happen, that you don't have enough of that to detect it and begin breaking it down. But a really easy way to know if that's happening is, like you said, you were kind of angry and you probably felt like it was sitting like a brick.
Yep.
And probably when you pooped, your poop floated.
Probably. That part I don't remember, but probably.
Too much fat. So, pretty simple thing. Look in the toilet.
Exactly. That is really where a good indication. I mean, even for pets. I mean, how many times have I been told, get me a poop sample?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you have to get rid of it somehow. And like the stomach lining and everything, like your intestines, I mean, these are all thin things, there's not a lot keeping everything, where it's supposed to be. So if something's amiss, then that can cause some serious issues.
And man, when your gut hurts, if you have like reflux or you always feel bloated, it's a terrible feeling.
Yes.
It's a terrible, terrible feeling.
Well, that's the other thing too. It's like, Um, I know like things that I've noticed with my own health because I haven't always been in tune with my body and known when I needed to get help. But all of a sudden, like I have heartburn and I've never had heartburn before. It's like, maybe that's something I need to pay attention to instead of just be like, oh, that's odd. I have heartburn and then forget all about it. Why not catch it before it turns into, a bigger whatever it may be. I'm curious actually, because you mentioned anger in relationship to the liver. What about sadness? How can that show up in the body?
Yeah. So sadness / depression. So it's a big one. It's something that a lot of my clients, when they're coming to me, it's sort of one of those pieces that you sort of don't want to talk about, but it's definitely an underlying issue. When you have sadness and depression, it's a link to that gut brain connection. So everything is created that your brain needs for your brain to feel functional and healthy. It's all created in the gut. So if your gut is not functioning properly, you may have too low of serotonin, too low of dopamine. I test for those. I look to see what your markers are. If you aren't producing those, then you're definitely going to have quite a bit of sadness. You're going to feel feelings of overwhelm. I have a lot of people that are maybe even on depression medication, but they're still struggling.
Yeah.
Again, I don't diagnose you. It's not a diagnosis. It's just looking at the body as a whole and going, there are some systems based on these functional labs that we're looking at that are off. That if we support those and we correct them, you'd be amazed. So personally, I was on antidepressants for over 10 years. And a lot of mine stemmed from grief. I lost my firstborn son 13 years ago. And it was, the worst experience of my life.
Yeah.
It caused massive depression in my life. Even though life moved on and things move on, sometimes that just happens. Well, there was so much more to it, right? And so after I got sick, I actually had to be pulled from the medication immediately because they thought I had Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is this other like crazy like disease that happens from medication. So I went through crazy withdrawals and was super scared. Here I had experienced massive depression. And I mean, personally, I had walked through suicidal thoughts and really felt overwhelmed at particular seasons of my life. So flash forward to working with the functional practitioner, and I'm saying to him, I'm scared. I'm scared for what I'm going to feel like going on medication. And you're saying I couldn't go back on it. That was my story because they were afraid of what was happening. And we started doing work on the gut, and I am now 6.5 years without medication. Now, I am not saying that everyone should not have medication. I'm a big proponent of if you need it, then you take it, and we will work alongside you. But that's just my story of there was all this gut dysfunction that was going on. I had a massive candida infection, which is overgrowth of yeast, which was totally suppressing all my serotonin. And serotonin is what makes you feel happy, right?
Yes.
And then I was being told I was in menopause. I had no progesterone. Progesterone is what makes you feel better throughout your cycle. It's like your happy hormone. And so there were all these key pieces, these puzzle pieces that were brought together to reveal that sadness, yes, there was grief. I needed counseling. I needed to work through the trauma. However, there was also a physical side to it that I needed to figure out and get balance in. I still have seasons where I get sad. I still have times where I might go, man, I'm not doing great. And guess what? I know the tools that I have to really change what I'm doing in my day and how I'm eating, to really turn that around, how I'm moving, how much sunlight I'm getting. So that's a big part of what I talk about with people is I'll support you. If you're on medication, I 100% will support you alongside that. But some people end up discovering as they get gut health, maybe they don't need as much, or maybe they don't need it like I haven't needed it in 6.5 years. Now, I'm not bulletproof. That may change, and I am not too proud to say I might have to go back on medication at some point in my life. Mental illness is real. I'm not saying it's not real. It's very real. And when you've experienced it, it's scary, right?
It is scary.
Overwhelming. It feels really scary. But functional medicine has this amazing place of really helping boost your body's natural ability to fight some of that when it's really overwhelming. So that's a great question.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you said that too, because I had not a similar experience because I didn't lose my firstborn, but I will say that I was on antidepressants and they helped. They did. They totally helped, but I had decided that I needed to be off them. And so but I couldn't just, not have anything else in place. So I fixed, like my gut health, and I, got my skills down so I could, change maybe my thinking when I started to go down those certain, worn neural pathways that I had already created. And it's just like, and I am all for, if you need it, please do take it. But I love the idea that it's not that you have to take it forever or even the same amount. There is hope for people that want to try and live their life without that as well and still be happy. So yeah, I'm with you though. I definitely, it saved my life. It really did. But I also am very glad that I don't have to be on it anymore. So, but if I needed it again, 100%, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Sometimes you just get to that place where you need something quick, like to just get you through until you can, figure everything else out. So
I love that you said that you had to figure out how to get out of those worn neural pathways, right? So when you start to look at like how the brain functions, there's a lot of info out there right now. It's kind of like all the rage to talk about like neural pathways and how neuroplasticity and stuff. They sound like smart words. Basically, our brain has the ability to heal itself. And it's really amazing. And so you can learn tools to get out of like a certain pathway that's leading towards some of the sadness. So like in grief, EMDR is this amazing tool that I tell a lot of clients if they've had a lot of trauma, seek out a therapist and try EMDR. It's amazing. It'll do fantastic things of changing the way your brain finds new patterns of thinking so that you don't get stuck in that trauma. And you know what else trauma does? It wrecks the gut.
Well, I mean, think about even fears, like, you feel it in your body. I mean, any sort of emotion that you feel it physically in your body, whether it's quote unquote a good one or a bad one. We feel it. That's why I love functional medicine in particular, because it takes into account the whole being, because, it's like we're like kiddie pools, everything is connected. It's not like a roll top desk where you can pull out one drawer and then close it and open up another one. It's all intertwined.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my goodness. So for somebody that let's say for some reason that you aren't able to work with whoever it is, what should somebody look for in a functional medicine practitioner?
Yeah. So, I think it's really important to see that someone doesn't just run tests and give you those results and provide supplementation. I understand why that happens. But when it comes to the functional approach, you really need someone to walk you through the process, because it's not a fast moving process. You didn't get to where you are all in one fell swoop, right? There's lots of decisions that have been made, lots of things that have happened to you, things you have done, food choices you've made, movement decisions you've made, trauma that's happened to you, all these different things come at you, right? And so it's a buildup over time. So looking for someone that says, I will stick with you until we get all the way through all the body systems. And the last to come on board are hormones, which is a real big bummer, because our hormones are the thing that typically we're always like, that's when a lot of women come to me. They're like, I feel like I'm crazy. I need help. And I'm like, okay, I just need you to hang with me. It's going to take some time. So look for someone that is going to provide more time with you than just like a one-time appointment where they look at the labs and give you supplements. Those supplements might do a lot for you, but there's more to it. There's more than just supplementing your way out of it. You've got to change a lot of different pathways, and you got to do it sequentially. You got to really work on all the systems.
So you mentioned all the systems. How many systems are there?
Yeah, so you have a lot of systems, right, all through your body. You have a brain, you have your organs, all your internal organs that are working. The systems that I really focus on are your HPA axis, which is where your adrenal system is at, which is when you hear adrenal, that's where you might have heard someone say you're in adrenal fatigue, which means you're just exhausted. Your adrenals are not putting out enough cortisol, or they're overshooting cortisol constantly, or they're putting it out at the wrong time. It's putting out like at night instead of in the morning time. So that's your HPA axis. So that's a big system that I work with. And then I work on the gut. So that's like your stomach. That's all of the GI stuff. That's pooping. That's how you feel when you eat. It's how you feel a couple hours after you eat. It's how you feel after you exercise, because your gut is really tied to what's like how it's using glucose while you exercise and where it's pulling its energy from. So what's going on with that gut? And then I look at hormones. That's another system. So the hormones, you have a lot of different hormones. The primary ones that I work with are your thyroid function, which would be your TSH, your T3, your T4, things like that. We look at those. Your estrogen and progesterone, which are, if you're a woman, those are your primary functioning ones that bring cycles. And then testosterone, which we all have testosterone, and men have estrogen and progesterone and testosterone as well, right? We all produce them. They just have to be produced at different levels based on what our body needs to do. And then I look at your melatonin. That's another hormone, which is what calms you down and helps you sleep in the evening. And then I look at all of your like B levels, like all your vitamins and how those are contributing to hormone production. So, and cortisol is what, is a hormone that's also responsible for what's going on in the HPA axis. And then we look at minerals. So your minerals, they actually impact all different parts of your system. So they impact your adrenal system, your hormones, your gut, your heart, your liver, your kidneys. Your minerals are key for everything. They're kind of just like the catch-all of how your body has to use that to be able to get up and go and do all the metabolic function that it needs to do for your cells to do all the things that they're designed to do. So your minerals are super key in looking at your health. And then I also like to really look at, personally, I love to look with my clients at their mind, what their mindset is. So that in and of itself is like it's not necessarily like a system as much as like a way of thinking and a way to kind of move through life so that you feel a little bit better. So.
Well, yeah, as somebody who has been a personal trainer and a nutrition coach, most people in those areas know what to do, but it's up here that really needs all the help. So I totally appreciate that, on top of, because you can have all the information, but if you can't digest it and make those changes, then it doesn't really do you any good to know.
That's right.
Well, that is about all the time we have. I just want to make sure that we pop up your website one more time. And also, if people want to reach out and get some more information, they can reach you on Instagram as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say, Renee, that it has been an absolute pleasure to pick your brain, and you schooled me and I loved it. It was so much fun. And thank you for being on the show.
If you do reach out and you tell me that you found me through watching this, you will be provided with $200 off of working with me. So, and that will extend for as long as you see this.
That's $200 off, people. Don't forget that. So go ahead, check her out right here. Love that. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you, Renee, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back on the show again soon.
Okay, sounds great.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And that is all the time that we have. We will see you guys again next week.